In CloudFormation, we get control over what happens to a resource after we remove it from our configuration, from our template, with the deletion policy attribute. So let's try that in practice. I'm going to comment out some of the bits and pieces we've been using in other lessons, and I'm going to make a new stack. So let's pop over to lib. Let's create a new class called mybucketstack.ts, or sorry, a file called mybucketstack.ts. Inside of that, we will make the class. That's got to extend the CDK stack resource. We need a constructor. It's got our favorite three arguments, the scope that we are attaching it to, and that's a construct, a logical ID, which is a string, and then we need some properties. But actually, we're not going to pass in any custom properties to my bucket stack, so I'm just going to use stack props, which is provided by CDK. Then we need to call the parent constructor with the same three arguments, our scope, our ID, and our props. When that's done, let's make a bucket, and we're going to use the level 2 bucket construct, not the CFN bucket, which is a level 1 construct. We'll attach it to the current scope. We'll call it my bucket, and we don't actually need any properties at all. So let's pop over to the bin folder. Let's initialize that my bucket stack. Let's attach it to the application. We'll just call it my bucket stack. And again, we don't need any properties by default. Let's run a synth, make sure that runs okay. Lovely, and we have an S3 bucket. Now you'll note that the deletion policy that we talked about earlier has been set to retain for the bucket. And there's a similar thing to the deletion policy for when the resource is created and then deleted as part of a replacement. So for example, if you change the name of an S3 bucket, you can't do that without deleting and recreating the bucket. And so there's a similar option for what you should do in that scenario. You know, should you delete it? Should you keep the old version? And in the case of an S3 bucket, you're likely going to store some important information in it, most likely. And so I think it makes sense that the default here is retain. Now, if these weren't specified, if these weren't present there at all, the default would be that CloudFormation would delete the resource when we finish using with it, when we take it out of the template. So let's see how we can make CloudFormation, or more accurately, how we can make CDK choose a different deletion policy for our resource. So let's pop into the props of our construct here. Let's set a removal policy, and then this is one of those things that has a little bit of an enum or an abstraction, and so we've got three options: destroy, retain, and snapshot. Obviously for an S3 bucket, we're not going to be able to snapshot it. That's not our function built into S3, but we could choose destroy, and we can run synth again. And now the update replace policy and the deletion policy have both been set to delete. And so if we took this bucket out of our template, if we stopped calling that new bucket over in the code to create the bucket, it would get deleted. The only caveat being that obviously for a bucket it has to be empty to be deleted. And luckily there's a really convenient option in the L2 construct for S3 buckets that would let us do that by default, or automatically I should say. So it's one of those things where it's really fiddly in CloudFormation, but CDK has made a nice abstraction to help you do it. For a lot of resources though, that's not really relevant, and we just have the default removal policy options of destroy to delete it, retain to just leave it and keep it there in the account, and snapshot to produce some kind of snapshot for it if appropriate, like an EBS volume.